Good luck.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
What?
Nessun dorma.
What are you doing?
Oh, my combo. It's a 2 card, sorry.
What?
Nessun dorma.
What the hell?
Where did all these monsters come from? Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. There's so much stuff in Lead that deserves a special mention. Single cards that empower the top decks, rogue strategies getting the pieces they need to become more competitive, but to me, nothing tops the new Melodius support, which, with just a few cards, has already become more splashable than branded Fusion. Today, we're going to try them out in their native deck. Presenting Melodius.
You sing with the voice of 1,000 angels.
So here's the list. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is the #1 place to go if you need a pack simulator, a card database, or want to read a wealth of strategy articles. They also post breakdowns and lists from every major TCG and Master Duel tournament, including the Master Circuit series. Give them a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. So with that, let's see what we can make of Melodius. Melodius has been around a number of times throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Most known for how frustrating a special summoned Aria is, it's been rogue playable at best in the TCG despite multiple waves of support, and meta in Duel Links mostly because they got a skill that resolved all of their outstanding problems. See, the Melodiuses are broken up into 3 sub-archetypes: Divas, Songstresses, and Maestras. The Divas and Songstresses are incredible at taking over the game and supporting their fellow Fae, but the Maestras are, well, 2 tribute monsters that are required for some of the fusions. Turns out making a third of your archetype Blue Eyes White Dragons doesn't exactly harmonize. However, the support in Lead has Melodius players singing Konami's praises. To resolve the outstanding Maestra issue, they've been given 2 new tools. Firstly, a set of pendulum monsters that are simple to scale and enable specials of these songbirds. These monsters also have synergy with old favorites like Aria that excel when special summoned. And secondly, they received a fusion monster that doesn't use Maestras at all. Previously, Schuberto was the only non-Maestra fusion worth playing, but Baka is everything the deck needed. It's a combo starter, a perfect ostinato target, and represents a ton of material on field, allowing them to make use of an overlooked Link monster that's finally getting her day on stage. So with that, let's get into the card by card. We'll begin with the Pendulum monsters. 3 copies of Couplet the Melodious Songstress. You can't Pendulum summon except for light monsters, and if you don't control any face-up monsters other than Melodiuses, you can add a Melodious spell trap from your deck to your hand. That's a hard once, and usually the card you're going to be getting is Melodious Concerto. This allows you to fusion summon a fairy fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, field, or Pendulum zones. And if a Melodious fusion monster is sent to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, even during the damage step, you can put this card on the bottom of your deck, then draw a card. As a monster effect, if Couplet is added to your hand except for drawing it for your normal draw, you can reveal it and then special summon a level 4 or lower Melodious from your hand or graveyard. Notably, she's a 5, so it's not exactly popular. If a Melodious fusion monster is special to your field while it's face up in your extra deck, you can put it in your Pendulum zone. That's an effect that's shared by Refrain the Melodious Songstress, but this card also has a bunch of effects of its own. In the Pendulum scale, you can target a Melodious fusion monster you control, send a Melodious from your deck to the graveyard, and the targeted monster gains attack equal to the level of that monster sent to the graveyard times 200 until the end of the turn. Then, as a monster, if normal or special, you can add a Melodious from your deck to your hand, except for herself, and if a Melodious fusion monster is special, of course, it scales. So, usually the way these cards work in the TCG is you activate Ostinato, which allows you to fusion summon a Melodious fusion monster from your extra deck provided you control no monsters, using monsters from your hand or deck as fusion material. Of course, it does destroy the monster at the end of the turn, but let's be honest, that's never going to happen. What you send is a Couplet and a Refrain, and then afterwards you get a Baka from your extra deck. Baka is a fusion monster, which says while you control this fusion summoned card, the activated effects of your Melodious fusion monsters can't be negated, and you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can special summon a Melodious from your deck, and if sent to the graveyard, you can target a Melodious in your graveyard, except Baka, special summon it in defense position. Immediately, you get 2 material on your side of the field. You're able to use Couplet to add a Melodious Concerto, and the Concerto to perform another fusion summon, after which you have Scales, and the ability to, when the Baka goes to the graveyard, reborn the monster you send off of Refrain. It's a ton of material, and integral to a significant amount of your combo plays. Let's look at some Melodiuses that aren't just being splashed and everything. First up is Sonata. This card, if you control a Melodius monster, can just be specialed from the hand for free, and while on the field, all fairy-type monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense. This looks pretty mid, but just having more material is incredibly important, and getting those attack stats up is nothing to shake a stick at either. 2 copies of Soprano the Melodious Songstress. This is one of the legacy waves of support for the archetype. When special summoned, you can target a Melodious in your graveyard except herself, add it to your hand, and once per turn you can fusion summon a Melodious Fusion from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion material, including this card. We have 1 copy of Canon the Melodious Diva. This can be special from the hand if you control a Melodious, and once per turn you can target a Melodious you control, change its battle position. Aria is an integral part of the end board, which a lot of decks have trouble getting over. While this special summoned card is on the field, Melodious monsters you control can be targeted by card effects or destroyed by battle, and are 1 Maestra Shopina. Once per turn you can target a light fairy type monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and you can't activate non-light monster effects during the turn you activate this effect. Because we're playing so many fairies, we're on 3 Herald of Orange Light. I've already spoken about Ostinato. First movement solo, unfortunately, is an extremely good card in the deck because I think it currently commands an unbelievable price tag just by virtue of being the card that theoretically could have been bought out. If you control the monsters, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Melodious monster from your hand or deck, and of course, that is a once per turn. It locks you into Melodiuses, but who really cares? Melodious Concerto means that once you start deciding to link off the Baccas in order to convert them into more powerful options, you can then recoup some of the losses of using Melodiuses from your hand. After that, we've got 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, 2 Droll and Lockbird, 2 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chili, 2 Effect Veiler, 1 Called by the Grave, triple Infinite Impermanence, and a card that is becoming unfortunately more and more popular in main decks, 1 Rivalry of Warlords. In the extra, of course, we've got Bacca. I'll talk briefly about Schuberta. During either player's turn, you can target up to 3 cards in any graveyard, banish them, and if you do, this card gains 200 attack for each. We've got 1 copy of Bloom Diva, the old boss from Duel Links. This is made with a Maestra and a normal Melodious. Can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. You take no battle damage from attacks involving this card, and if it battles a special summoned monster, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal in the difference between the original attack of the opponent's monster and this card, and if you do, destroy the opponent's monster. Finally, we've got 2 copies of Flowering Etoile, the Melodious Magnificat, and this is just an unbelievable card. As a quick effect, you can banish until the end phase any number of Melodiuses you control, then return up to that many face-up cards your opponent controls to the hand, and then if this fusion summoned card leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon a Melodious from your hand or extra deck except herself. After that, we've got some generics, of course, Typhon, Baguska, Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, Protector of the Agent's Moon, SP Little Knight, Bloom Harmonist, the Melodious Composer. If link summoned, you can discard a card to special summon 2 Melodious monsters with different levels from your deck to your zones this card points to in defense, and of course you are locked to Melodiuses, and if a Melodious monster this card points to attacks, your opponent can't activate cards or effects till the end of the damage step, and 1 Gravity Controller to link off a singular copy of Bacca. I want to talk real quickly about different card choices you could be playing in this deck, because this list is very much not yet set in stone. It's likely in its infancy and will continue to evolve over the coming weeks. It's topping already, but could get a lot better. Theoretically, you could play Elegy as like a singleton brick in your deck to potentially add some sort of destruction protection to your lock. Historically, this was a card that was very popular with Aria. Here, I think it's kind of unnecessary. 2 Concerto has been really popular recently as well, just because it's not terrible to draw, and it's fine to search afterwards as well. You will be going through a couple of turns with these cards. Opera is pretty good if you're going second. It makes Ostinato give you protection going second. And then some people play Tam Tam as a side card and an extra fusion extender. I don't love this, but it certainly has been around. And finally, it's important to recognize that Bloom Prima means that at any point during the game, you have the capacity to OTK out of nowhere. In the side here, we are playing a driver package. We've got 2 Deltas and a Gamma. We've got 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, 3 Cosmic Cyclone, 3 Crossout Designator, and another format mainstay I am really reticent to tell you is Dimensional Barrier. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Dark World, and I always cherish the opportunity to play against Dark World, if only because it lets us show what our deck can do uninterrupted. These people need to start playing hand traps. We're going to begin with a copy of Pot of Prosperity, finding off the top up. Come on. There it is. All right, give me that ostinato. We'll take that, and then afterwards we'll fire it off. We're going to send a couple of cards to the graveyard in order to summon out a Baka. Then we'll activate Baka's effect in order to get a copy of Shapina, and Shapina's effect in order to grab back a Couplet. Couplet will trigger here, which enables us to special summon this copy of Soprano. Then we'll activate Soprano's effect in order to go into a Flowering Étoile. We will bring back this copy of Shapina, then normal summon a copy of Refrain. Refrain here is going to grab us an Aria, and we will set the Couplet, activating its effect for a copy of Melodius Concerto. Let's fire that off, and using our Pendulum monsters to convert into a Schuberta, then using their effects to convert into Scales. We will use Shapina in order to grab back the Soprano, then summon it and the Aria, activate Soprano in order to get back that Baka, and Soprano's effect in order to make a second one. We'll pass back to our opponents on this. They'll draw for turn. They're going to begin with a copy of Allure of Darkness, followed up with a Dark Corridor. Afterwards, they're going to pitch this copy of Rainbow, then activate Rainbow in order to get Grapha. Let's go for Gates of Dark World. They will banish this Rainbow, pitch the Grapha, trigger Grapha to pop our Scale. Next, they're going to go for Genta for another copy of Gates of Dark World. They'll fire that, then activate Gates of Dark World in order to pitch this copy of Snow. Unfortunately, can't be interrupted with the Ash Blossom because the Genta chain blocks. Afterwards, they're going to bring back this copy of Grapha and go for Nessie. Nessie here hits Nessie, shockingly, in a 6-card hand. That's just the way it goes. Into Bigfoot, pitching this Grapha. They'll trigger the effect of the Grapha in graveyard, popping our other Scale, and activate Dark World Accession in order to make a big Grapha. They will go into Dragooblion, and then afterwards it could go into a Numeron Dragon, but that's not enough damage, I believe. They do get to walk over Schuberta, which is unfortunate. Then they're going to normal summon a copy of Genta, go for Nessie, hit the Nessie again, and pass turn. We'll activate Schuberta at end phase to get all of these terrible cards out of the graveyard, and of course we'll go for Étoile as well. They will activate the effect of the Grapha to change the effect of the Étoile, but that means on our turn we can just use it. We will bounce half of our board to bounce pretty much all of our opponents, and we should be able to go from lethal from here. We'll go Bloom Harmonist here, and then we can activate all of our graveyard effects, including the Concerto, bring back the Shapina, summon a Soprano and a copy of Sonata, Soprano for the Aria, cycle back the Aria, Shapina to cycle back the Soprano, and our opponent will concede. Our second match is up against Lightsworn Runic, and this is a really cool deck. I have high hopes in the future that it will actually be good. We're going first, and our hand looks real nice. We're going to begin with a copy of First Movement Solo. You'll notice that we don't have Ostinato this time, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal because our hand is great. We'll go ahead and grab a Sonata, and then, of course, after activating Refrain, we will activate the effect of the Couplet for a copy of Concerto. Concerto here is going to convert into Baka. Baka is going to trigger, as will both of our Pendulum Scales, in order to set them, and Baka will bring out a copy of Shapina. We'll activate the effect of Refrain in order to send a Couplet, then Shapina to add that back to hand, triggering the effect of the Couplet in order to summon the Sonata in Grip. This Soprano is going to convert into a Flowering Étoile, and then afterwards we will activate the graveyard effects of our Concerto and our Baka in order to get back Shapina, activating that soft OPT and summoning our copy of Sonata. That's going to get us a Bloom Harmonist, summoning 2 from deck, one of which is an Aria. Then we'll summon the Soprano, use its effect on the Shapina, and then activate Soprano's effect for a Schuberta. Let's pass back to our opponent. They'll draw for turn, and it's a Runic Tip with 1 in hand already. That's kind of frustrating for them. They will go to main phase and activate Solar Recharge, pitching this Felis. They'll activate the Black Goat Laughs, unfortunately calling Flowering. We will Ash this activation of the weird Snow Lightsworn thing, and then they'll go Runic Fountain into a copy of Flashing Fire. Unfortunately for them, Schuberta completely checks this line. We will just banish their entire graveyard, at which point they're going to normal summon Weiss and go into Tri-Edge Master. Tri-Edge Master draws them a card, it's an otherwise, and then they're going to go for Super, Star Slayer, Typhon, Sky Crisis before passing. We're just going to clean this one up. We'll begin with the effect of our Couplet. Our opponent's going to go for a Runic Tip into a Runic Destruction, which is kind of cool. They can theoretically cut us off of Pendulum Scales, but in actuality, it's not really going to matter. We have Ash for the activation of this Runic Fountain, and then we can activate Concerto, to which our opponent will activate the Black Goat Laughs. We will go into Schuberta, then activate the effects of our Couplet and our Refrain in order to set Scales. Let's Pendulum summon out the Shapina and the Soprano. We'll activate the effect of the Soprano in order to get back this copy of Sonata, make a copy of Bloom Diva, and then summon out the Sonata, getting in for way over lethal. Woof. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing what else but Snake Eye. This game we're going to do the anti-Nibiru line, which turns out to be good because, as you can see, there is a Nibiru creeping in our opponent's hand. It is a lower ceiling than some of the other lines, but you'll see why it's effective momentarily. We're going to begin with a copy of Couplet that's going to grab us a Concerto. We'll follow it up with a Pot of Prosperity, finding off the top. I guess we can take the Sonata here. We'll go for a Refrain. We'll activate the effect of the Refrain in order to grab an Aria, and then we'll go for the Melodious Concerto in order to make what else but Flowering Atoll. Stick with me, stick with me. We're going to set Scales, and then we'll activate Refrain in order to set a Couplet to the graveyard. We'll special summon an Aria and a Soprano. We'll activate the effect of the Soprano for the Couplet, and the Couplet effect in order to summon out the Sonata. Here we're going to go for Soprano, and our opponent's going to Nibiru. We will chain Flowering Étoile and just banish our entire board. All right, and that's it. It's not as high impact as a full board would have been, but we do still have the Etoile online, which is a really big pressure point. They're going to go for a Snake Eye Ash, and then afterwards they're going to fire off the Poplar. Poplar is going to summon itself to their side of the field, and then they will get the field spell. The Divine Temple triggers. They're going to set the new card, Snake Eye Diabellstar, into a Relinquished Anima. They're going to go Snake Eye Ash here for Flamberge Dragon, and Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils for Diabellstar. They'll go Hita the Fire Charmer Ablaze in order to summon 2 back, at which point we will go for the Flowering Etoile. We're going to bounce as much of the board as we possibly can. Our opponent will go for Diabellstar here in order to get OSS. They're going to fire the OSS, setting the field spell in order to grab Oak. From here, they can go Wanted in order to draw a card, and oh god, it's a 1-for-1. That's just what we need. Another piece of material on their side of the field. They're going to go Oak, special summon Poplar into Raging Phoenix into Zealantis. Zealantis effect in order to put our Aria face down, and unfortunately, that's one of the most effective ways to get rid of this card. They're going to pop the remainder of the cards on their side of the field, summon the Raging Phoenix, and this should be lethal on its own. 37, 25, 27. Let's go next. So it's time for game 2, and we are once again without Ostinato. This is a crusty hand, but it might work. We'll go Refrain. They will affect Valor. That Bestial Druisworm is just staring at me. We're going to go Sonata into Refrain. We'll activate this Melodious Concerto we drew in order to go into Baka. We'll activate one of the Refrains and the Baka in order to summon out this copy of Shapina. We can then activate Refrain to send a couplet to the graveyard, then Shapina to add the couplet back. We'll activate Couplet's effect to summon out the Soprano, then Soprano effect to make Flowering Etoile. This will trigger the effect of the Baka and the effect of the Concerto, but our opponent's going to Druisworm our Baka target, so we can't abuse the non-OPT on this Shapina, the Melodious Maestro. We will set Couplet and get a copy of Concerto. Drew Ostinato off that Couplet, by the way. Kind of frustrating when we have a full board. We will go for the Link monster here and just end on Aria Pass. We're passing back to our opponent with the bounce and the card that's hard to out. They're going to begin with a copy of Bonfire. They'll then normal summon a Snake Eye Ash. That's going to grab them a Poplar. They'll activate the effect of the Poplar, and of course activate the effect of the Poplar on field in order to grab the field spell. From here they can go Anima into Poplar, set in the back row, and Ash send the Poplar for a copy of Flamberge. They're going to go to Dark here, triggering the effect of the Flamberge in order to bring back Poplar and Ash, at which point we will go for the Flowering Etoile. They're going to go for Ghost Ogre, but we can still bounce some of the board. We'll leave this Druisworm on field and trigger the effect of the Etoile and this Melodious Concerto, drawing Ash, god, we're so good, into a copy of Schuberta. They're going to go the Druisworm on the Schuberta. We can activate Druisworm to keep some problematic cards out of the graveyard, and they will resolve the effect of the Diabellstar. As they go for the OSS, afterwards we will Ash it and hopefully make it to the next game. Oh, golly gosh, what a rip. Afterwards, they will draw a card off of this Wanted. Okay, it's not 1-for-1. They will get in for 25 and then set one card and pass. We'll bring everything back, and we should be able to kill them from here. We're going to begin with a Pendulum Summon of just this Refrain. We'll activate Refrain's effect in order to grab Sonata, normal summon the Soprano, and then afterwards we'll activate the effect to go into Baka. Baka here is going to summon a copy of Couplet from deck, then we'll activate Couplet's effect in order to grab a Melodious Concerto. Melodious Concerto effect to go into Flowering Etoile again, into Baka in order to summon back this Soprano. Soprano effect in order to grab back this copy of Sonata, and then Fusion summon a copy of Schuberta. Sonata, and we should be good to go. Diabellstar does trigger here, which allows them to once again gain access to a Wanted. Theoretically, they can do something with that next turn, but we will just get in and pass turn. This is a formidable board. It's going to be very difficult for them to get through. They'll activate Wanted. They are just swimming in Diabellstars. They're going to activate the effect and the effect of the Poplar. We will Valor the Diabellstar, and at point of resolution, they will have nothing to do but normal summon the Ash. They'll go Ash into a copy of Poplar, trigger the effect of the Poplar. Poplar can get them OSS access here, I believe. Yep. And then afterwards, they can go into Hita effect targeting the Ash Blossom, and we can Schuberta away a bunch of powerful cards in their graveyard. Afterwards, we're going to go Etoile in order to bounce the entire field and their entire field, and they are just stuck on a Bonfire and an OSS with no good targets. They will go OSS, we will Ash Blossom, and they'll scoop it up. So it's time for that all-important Game 3, and this is going to be a crusty one. As you can see, they have Wanted, a Seeker of Sinful Spoils, but we have, like, cards that check that, but they have cards that check that. We might actually have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. They're going to begin with Wanted, grab a copy of Diabellstar, then activate the effect of the Diabellstar on field. We will Gamma this. They will Ash the Gamma. Pretty happy about that use. They're going to go for OSS. Afterwards, they're going to triple tack, but they can't get everything. They're just going to take the spell card, go OSS here for a copy of Ash. They'll activate the effect of the Ash, but Gamma, of course, is not once per turn, so we will go Driver and Gamma, pop the Ash, at which point they will pass it back. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any starters here, so we're going to pass back to them as well. I don't want to commit because I want to keep Ostinato alive if we draw it. Now, because they have OSS in the graveyard, we have to expend our Ash on that, but it means they get to use the Wanted in order to draw, and they draw a Wanted. Come on. Of course, they know that we have the Herald, so they can't commit to the Diabellstar. We do grab a copy of Soprano. That might be enough. We will go into a copy of Baka here off the effect of the Soprano, but we walk directly into a Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. No big deal. We will take the damage to go into a Gravity Controller. That allows allows us to bring back the Soprano and trigger its effect to grab back this copy of Sonata. From here, we can activate Soprano again to go into Schuberta and get in for 1,024. We are very slowly getting there, still retaining the necessary amount of material in hand to contest this copy of Diabellstar. They're going to go for Bonfire into Poplar, activate the effect of the Poplar, and we do have to pull the trigger here, I think. We're going to negate it. They get to set the Poplar in the back row. We will Schuberta whatever we can, but unfortunately just going for the Diabellstar here might be enough. They'll go Diabellstar into an OSS, and we'll just scoop them up. So we're back with the deck, and a painful ass back and forth with a debilitating loss is honestly completely fine this format. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, Ostinato is crazy. It's a fusion from deck that is not once per turn, so if it's ashed and then you just have a second copy, fire it again. 2, the new fusion, Étoile, gives you a hugely synergistic piece of interruption, something the deck was fiercely lacking before. Having a non-targeting bounce for face-up cards that can bounce up to 5 cards is huge, and of course Étoile can clear your own field on your turn till end phase, so you can activate first movement solo or Ostinato again and have a temporarily empty board. And 3, the Aria lock is actually quite hard for some decks to out. A Snake Eye has to go into Zelantis or Goddess in Engine, and other decks have to commit heavily into interruptions to even get a chance to break it. Having your Aria lock backed up with hand traps also means they can struggle to reach these outs and fundamentally be unable to crack your board. And the cons. 1, this deck has some issues playing with some of the higher impact hand traps. I call these turn enders, provided they're being paired alongside another piece of non-engine. You can end on interrupts if you're hit with a Nibiru, but if you have a Nibiru and a low impact hand trap, you are pretty sparse on interaction. Ghost Ogre on Couplet, early Drolls if you don't see Ostinato, these can all be quite deadly. 2 is that, on that note, a lot of the deck's power is concentrated in exactly Ostinato. Not seeing Ostinato isn't the end of the world, but the card is a huge threat and great for keeping card advantage, considering it's the best one-card combo in the game. And 3, Tenpai is kind of a problem. Your end board being centered around a lock that they can just totally ignore because of the way their engine works, their explosive output, and their Synchro 10 means that you have to rely on well-played Schubertas and Étoile activations to clean up the board, and often that's not going to be enough. Just pray you drew some non-engine to back up your board. Overall, with a growing number of tops under its belt, it looks like Melodius is going to make some noise this format. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These 10-minute testings are functionally subsidized by, and occasionally suggested by, my Patreons. I'm going to go ahead and read out some of the higher tier Patreons now, without whom these videos would not be possible. Huge thanks to Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Ally, Brett Henry, Canner, Seaweed, Darkmaster Zork, Derpin Dragon, Devin Senpai, DJ Elefante, Gravity, John Piet, Juan Cruz Avila Zati, Nightmare, Legal Rights, Lockstone, Luis Hernandez, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Dolce, soon, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Nebula Yu-Gi-Oh!, Project Mercury, Rose Lapine, Troy Says By Erasure Is Gay, Vincent Storm, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, Your Pot of Greed Does What, and Yuki. Couldn't have done it without you.